Chapter 4, Lesson 3 is on page 182. We're going to be doing the multiplication property of inequalities. Yesterday we did the adding and subtracting. Today we're going to do the multiplying and dividing. Only thing we're going to have to remember is when we, in an inequalities only, when we either multiply or divide in an inequality by a negative number, we're going to have to reverse the sign of the inequality. So when we multiply or divide by an inequality, we have to reverse the sign of the inequality. Let's start off with number 36 first. First, let me make sure I fix my problem. Minus 5/6y less than or equal to negative 3/4. I'm just used to writing equalities all the time. So just remember that if we add or multiply or divide, by a negative number on both sides, we're going to have to flip the sign of that equality. Also up here I put for reference just that we can remember what things look like. Negative 1 divided by 2 is the same as 1 divided by negative 2 is the same as negative 1 divided by 2. So don't forget to flip that sign if we multiply or divide by inequality. So let's take a look at problem number 36. I'm going to stare at this for just a second and I'm going to say, you know what, it might be a good idea if we multiplied both sides by the reciprocal. Let me make sure I do this quite correctly. So I'm going to multiply this by 6/5 negative times negative 5/6 times y. And if I do it to that side, then I better get myself lined up and do it on the other side. Minus 3/4 times negative 6/5. Doing exactly the same thing. Well, this is nice and neat on this side because things will cancel out. That's why I'm using that reciprocal. And negative times negative is positive. So on the left side I end up with y. I'm multiplying by a negative number, a negative fraction. Don't forget, I have to flip the sign of the inequality. Let's finish this side. We end up with minus 18 divided by 20, but this is a negative, so this looks like 18/20. Negative times negative gives me a positive, and if I simplify that further, y turns out to be greater than or equal to 9/10. There's our solution. Number 42, 4 is less than or equal to negative 9n plus n. 4 is less than or equal to negative 9n plus 1n. Negative 9n plus 1n, I think, is minus 8n. So 4 turns out to be less than or equal to negative 8 times n. Let's divide both sides by negative 8. So this looks like I can cancel out the negative 8s. And I have to flip this sign, so I'm going to make sure that I get that sign and flip it the other way. So I'm going to rewrite this as 4/8. Turns out to be greater than or equal to n with a minus sign in front of it. I flipped the sign of this inequality, this less than or equal to became a greater than or equal to. I divided by a negative 8, so those canceled out. So n turns out to be, oops, let's go back. N turns out to, oops, still with the red. One more time. So n turns out to be less than or equal to, n is less than or equal to, I'm reading the problem this way now, n is less than or equal to minus 1/2. Minus 4/8 is the same as minus 1/2. I'm reading the problem to the right to the left, from right to left. N is less than or equal to minus 1/2.